The Midtown Fitness Center in Phoenix buzzed with the usual rhythm of post-work chaos. The clang of weights, the steady squeak of sneakers against the rubberized floor, and the faint hum of music in the background painted a familiar scene. Among the crowd, Kendra stood out, a 34-year-old black woman, focused and purposeful. She was the embodiment of strength and grace, her every movement a dance of precision, deadlifts, burpees, pull-ups, all executed flawlessly. She didn't seek attention, didn't linger in conversation. She was here for one thing, and one thing only, to work. She was dressed as she always was, simple black leggings, a tank top, and her earbuds in place. It was her silent declaration to the world, no small talk, just determination. Today, however, the routine would be anything but ordinary. As Kendra adjusted the weights on the squat rack, a shadow fell over her. A man, in his mid-40s, broad-shouldered and built like someone who spent countless hours at the gym, approached. There was something unsettling about him, something about the way he moved, as if he thought he owned the space around him. The smirk on his face when she noticed him made her straighten her posture instinctively. "You're using that wrong," he said, his voice oozing with condescension. Kendra, without missing a beat, raised an eyebrow and took out one earbud. "Excuse me," she responded, her voice steady, unbothered. "The weights," he continued, waving a hand towards the equipment. "You're not setting them up right. You could hurt yourself." Kendra didn't flinch. Instead, she gave a small, polite smile. "Thanks, but I've got it." But he didn't leave. No, instead, he crossed his arms and planted himself beside her, his stance almost territorial, as if marking the squat rack as his own. "I've been coming here for years," he added, his tone now wrapped in thinly veiled arrogance. "Let me show you the proper form." "No need," Kendra said firmly, putting the earbud back in and turning her attention to the barbell. His smirk faltered, replaced by a scowl. Kendra couldn't hear the muttered words that followed, but she felt the shift in the air. A low hum of tension settled over them, and a few people nearby glanced over, sensing the growing discomfort but choosing to stay out of it. It was the kind of situation where everyone convinces themselves it's not their problem. Kendra continued her workout, unfazed, her movements flowing seamlessly from one exercise to the next. But he wasn't done. No, the man followed her like a shadow. Each time she changed exercises, he found something to criticize. She ignored him, as one does with an irritating fly. Then, it happened. She moved to the bench press, adjusting the weights, and that's when he spoke, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Women like you think they know everything, huh?" Kendra froze, mid-lift. Slowly, she turned toward him. Her expression was calm, but her eyes, they blazed. "What exactly is that supposed to mean?" she asked, her voice low but sharp, a quiet storm beneath her words. The room seemed to hold its breath. The clattering of weights and murmured conversations grew dim, like the space itself was drawing closer, waiting. A few heads turned, their curiosity piqued, but no one moved. No one dared to intervene. The man shrugged, clearly emboldened by the shift in attention. "I'm just saying, maybe you should stick to what you're good at." But Kendra didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she gave him a long, deliberate look, as if measuring his worth in that single glance. She turned back to her workout, the air around them now charged with an invisible tension. The line had been drawn, it was only a matter of time before someone crossed it. The man didn't relent. His words lingered, sour and sharp, feeding the unease in the room like a slow poison. Kendra could feel his gaze on her, a weight pressing down on her shoulders, but she refused to acknowledge it. She finished her set, moved to the water fountain, and took a few steady steps. The brief distance gave her just enough time to assess the situation. Men like him, she knew them well. Arrogant, insecure, desperate for control in every space they entered. But Kendra wasn't intimidated. Years of training, years of discipline had taught her the value of staying calm under pressure. Yet, that didn't mean she wasn't aware of the heat of the moment, the undercurrent of tension that was rising, threatening to boil over. As she reached for her water bottle, he followed her. The gym's noise faded as he leaned against the wall, arms crossed, jaw clenched in indignation. "Hey," he barked, his voice cutting through the air. "I'm talking to you." Kendra paused, gripping the bottle a little tighter. But she didn't turn to face him. She took a long, deliberate sip, then carefully placed the cap back on, as if her movements alone were a silent declaration of her control. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Would she retaliate? Would she back down? But Kendra didn't escalate. She just stayed composed, letting the silence stretching the tension further. You don't have to act all tough if you're struggling, he continued, his voice dripping with condescension. Just say so, and I can help. Struggling. Kendra turned, her eyes steady, her voice as cool as a mountain lake. The only thing I'm struggling with is your inability to leave me alone. A few gym-goers glanced over, sensing the shift. Some even paused their workouts, as if waiting for a resolution to the silent standoff. Would he back off? Would she stand her ground? The questions lingered in the air, unanswered. The man let out a sharp, humorless laugh. You think you're better than me? He stepped closer, his posture now threatening, his eyes narrowing. What makes you so special? Kendra's gaze hardened, her voice steady as a drumbeat. Nothing makes me special, she replied. But I know how to handle myself. Do you? That hit a nerve. His face darkened, his anger simmering, and with a few long strides, he closed the distance between them. His voice dropped to a low, menacing growl. You better watch your mouth. The tension in the room became suffocating. The gym was no longer a backdrop to a casual workout session, it had become a battleground, and everyone in the room could feel the moment teetering on the edge of something dangerous. He reached out, his hand grasping her arm with a force that sent shockwaves through the room. A collective gasp rippled through the gym, the air thick with tension. Kendra didn't flinch, though. She stood there, frozen, her body unnervingly still as though calculating her next move. He smirked, tightening his grip. What are you going to do about it? His voice dripped with challenge. Then everything shifted. In a flash, Kendra's free hand shot up, gripping his wrist with an unyielding strength that caught him completely off guard. She twisted his arm with a fluidity that was almost graceful, forcing him to release her as though his hand had no say in the matter. His face morphed into one of disbelief, his shock palpable, but Kendra was already stepping back, maintaining the space between them, yet she held every ounce of control. Her voice cut through the stunned silence. Let me make one thing clear, she said, her tone sharp and unyielding. You don't put your hands on me. Ever. The man stumbled back, clutching his wrist in pain, his bravado rapidly unraveling. But instead of retreating, he let out a primal roar, his face twisting in frustration, and charged at her. This time, Kendra was ready. With a swift sidestep, she used his own momentum against him, sending him crashing to the floor with a resounding thud. The gym erupted into chaos. Shouts filled the air, people scrambled to clear a path, and a few phones were immediately pulled out to capture the spectacle. Groaning, the man lay on the mat, dazed and humiliated, while Kendra stood tall over him, her stance unwavering. You really don't know when to quit, she muttered, low enough that only he could hear. For a split second, he seemed to contemplate another attack, but the look in her eyes stopped him cold. Kendra wasn't just confident, she was trained. Dangerous. The realization struck him too late, and the fear in his eyes told the entire story. The damage was done. The entire gym had just witnessed his aggression and his crushing defeat at the hands of someone he had severely underestimated. A low hum of whispers spread throughout the room, the click of recording phones creating an almost eerie soundtrack. Kendra's breathing was steady as she surveyed the space, her body language calm but commanding, daring anyone else to challenge her. The man, still lying on the mat, struggled to his feet, his face a twisted mix of anger, shame, and confusion. You're crazy, he yelled, pointing at her like a wild animal. You think you can just... Enough. Kendra's voice sliced through the air, cutting off his tirade. You've embarrassed yourself enough for one day. Leave. A gym employee, a young woman with wide eyes and trembling hands, finally stepped forward. Sir, she said, her voice shaky, you need to go now. The man's jaw tightened, and for a fleeting moment, it seemed like he might resist. But the weight of the glaring stares from everyone around him, some angry, others disgusted, seemed to break him. He slumped, muttering something incoherent, and grabbed his bag from a nearby bench before storming out. The door slammed behind him, rattling the frame. The room exhaled as if holding its breath had been too much. Then, like a wave crashing on the shore, applause erupted, first one clap, then another, until a small, spontaneous cheer filled the air. Kendra raised a hand, signaling for silence. It's over, she said simply, her voice steady. The gym began to return to normal. People resumed their workouts, but whispers continued, glances lingering on Kendra. A young man approached her cautiously, his phone still in hand. That was incredible, he said, awe in his voice. Are you like some kind of martial artist? Kendra gave him a small smile, though her eyes remained serious. Something like that, she replied, her tone leaving no room for further questions. A middle-aged woman, her face still reflecting the shock of what she'd witnessed, stepped forward. Are you okay? She asked, her voice filled with concern. That was terrifying to watch. Kendra nodded, her tone calm yet firm. I'm fine, thank you for asking. The young woman from the counter, still looking uneasy, reappeared. Her name tag read Tara, and she fidgeted nervously with the hem of her shirt. Ma'am, Tara began, her voice tentative, I'm so sorry I didn't step in sooner. I just didn't know. Kendra cut her off with a reassuring smile. You did what you could, she said, her expression softening. Not everyone knows how to handle situations like that. Tara nodded, looking still unsettled. Should we call the police? He might come back. Kendra considered this for a moment, then shook her head. No need, she said firmly. He's not coming back. Trust me. Her voice carried a confidence that left no room for doubt. She turned, gathering her things as she headed for the locker room. As she walked away, the whispers continued, the weight of the moment still hanging in the air. In the locker room, Kendra moved with purpose, her steps steady and sure. She caught her reflection in the mirror, her face calm, composed, no trace of gloating. There was no victory in her expression. No need to prove anything. This had been about making a statement, respect is not optional. She packed her bag in silence, letting the adrenaline slowly fade. As she zipped it up, the young woman, Tara, cautiously entered. She lingered near the doorway, her hands wringing the hem of her shirt nervously. Can I ask you something? Tara finally asked. Kendra turned, her gaze steady but kind. Sure. Tara hesitated, then blurted out, how did you stay so calm? Kendra leaned against the bench, folding her arms across her chest. Her eyes were calm, distant, but her words were clear. It's not about staying calm, she said. It's about knowing you can handle yourself. Fear loses its grip when you're prepared. Tara tilted her head, curiosity lighting her expression. So you're trained like military or something? She asked, her voice tinged with awe. Kendra gave a small nod, the subtle shift of her body betraying years of discipline. I served as a Navy SEAL for over a decade, she replied. I've faced worse situations than what happened out there. Tara's eyes widened, a mix of respect and surprise sweeping across her face. Wow, that explains a lot, she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. Kendra's tone shifted, becoming more serious as she spoke again. But it's not just about training, she said, her gaze intense. It's about understanding when to act and when to let things go. He wasn't just angry. He was insecure. People like that look for easy targets. When you show them you're not one, they don't know what to do. Tara nodded slowly, processing the weight of Kendra's words, letting them sink in, shaping a new understanding. I wish I could be that brave, Tara confessed, her voice soft, vulnerable. You can, Kendra replied simply, her eyes unwavering. Bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about standing firm when it matters. Tara absorbed the advice, her thoughts whirling. She wanted to believe it, to embrace it. But could she? The locker room door creaked open, interrupting the moment. A middle-aged woman, the one who had checked on Kendra earlier, peeked in, her voice soft and apologetic. Sorry to interrupt, she said, her eyes filled with gratitude. I just wanted to say thank you. You handled that with so much grace. Honestly, it made me think about how often I let people walk all over me. Kendra offered a faint smile, the corners of her lips barely lifting. Standing up for yourself isn't always easy, she said, her voice steady, almost maternal. But it's necessary. Not just for you, but for everyone watching. The woman nodded, her expression thoughtful, the lesson settling into her mind. You're right, she said quietly. I think I needed to see that. Kendra slung her bag over her shoulder, ready to leave, but her voice carried one last reminder. We all need reminders sometimes, she said, her gaze soft but resolute. As Kendra stepped out of the locker room and into the cool evening air, she felt a quiet sense of resolve settle over her. She hadn't planned for any of this to happen. But maybe it was meant to. Maybe someone in that gym needed to see what true strength looked like. Not in physical power, but in composure, in resilience, in refusing to let ignorance win. Even as she walked to her car, she knew the story wasn't just about her. It was about everyone in that gym, about the lesson they had learned, about respect, courage, and the danger of underestimating someone based on assumptions. The gym emptied slowly that evening, but the event remained alive in everyone's minds. Conversations rippled through the group of regulars, some replaying what they had witnessed, others questioning their own reactions. Why had they hesitated? What would they have done differently? The confrontation had sparked something deeper than shock. It had forced people to examine their assumptions and their silence. Tara, still shaken but inspired, sat at the counter after her shift, scrolling through her phone. The video of Kendra's calm yet decisive actions had already begun circulating online, and the comments poured in admiration, disbelief, introspection. She handled it like a pro. This is what strength looks like. Why did no one step in sooner? The incident wasn't just about what had happened. It was about what it revealed. Too often, people underestimated others, whether out of arrogance, bias, or ignorance. Kendra had shattered those illusions with precision and grace. In doing so, she had become a symbol of quiet power. At home, Kendra sipped tea, her dog curled up contentedly at her feet. Her phone buzzed with messages from gym members, thanking her, praising her courage, or asking for advice. She appreciated the sentiment, but she didn't see herself as a hero. For her, it wasn't about the spotlight. It was about standing firm in the face of injustice, no matter how small or large the stage. The following week, she returned to the gym, as unassuming as ever. People greeted her differently now, their respect evident in their smiles and nods. Tara approached her shyly, holding out a card, her hands trembling just slightly. "Just wanted to say thanks," she said softly. "You've inspired me." Kendra opened the card later at home. Inside was a simple message: "You reminded me that strength comes in many forms. Thank you for showing me what it means to truly stand tall." It wasn't just Tara who had learned something that day. Everyone who had witnessed the confrontation, or even just heard about it, had walked away with a lesson. Respect is earned, not given lightly. Strength isn't about size or bravado. It's about resolve and courage. It's the quiet act of standing firm when the world expects you to crumble. The man, on the other hand, had disappeared from the gym entirely. Whether out of shame or fear, no one knew. But his actions had left a lasting impact. Not the one he intended, but one that served as a stark reminder of what happens when ignorance meets resilience. As Kendra reflected on the incident, one thought stood out: maybe the world didn't need more heroes. Maybe it just needed more people willing to stand their ground and demand the respect they deserved. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the power of respect, strength, and courage. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire, challenge, and leave you thinking long after the credits roll.